Alright, so, firstly, first video with a webcam. Yes, this is what I look like. Don't rub it in. Secondly, we've got an interesting video today to look through, so let's get right into that. This is on, what site is this on? The ex-Muslims of North America. So you should know where they're coming from. Let's just take a watch.
Sir, is it just because we're wearing these shirts?
Sorry, you're not allowed on property.
Why are we not allowed?
Because you're not allowed. You have shirts right now. There's a protest going on.
Yeah.
You can, if you take your shirts off, whatever you can.
Why
you can't
does
be in
my
there.
shirt offend you or
This is private property. You're being told you're on our property beyond this line here. You can just go ahead and
So
leave.
it's your official statement representing the Hilton that if my shirt offends
I'm
you,
making my statement right now. You are not allowed on the property right now because
because
part
I'm
of the
wearing
protest
shirt.
area.
Okay, but if I take my
But other
shirt,
people here are part of the
yeah, part of the convention, part of the protest.
If you don't have your shirts that would start any type of issue, then we would have no problem.
So can we?
So it's pretty clear they have an issue with their shirts. You'll get a good look at them later.
If you take off your shirt,
Why does my shirt start an issue? It just says I'm an
any
ex.
statements on there.
If you take off your shirt, can we go inside? This is outside. This is public property.
No, this
Okay,
is not.
right.
You are not on public property.
Now we can record.
You're still on our property. Excuse me.
Are we now? Are we still on your property?
I'm sorry? You're still on.
What about now?
When are we off
What
your
are we now?
property?
What are we now? Come, make sure you the black
Below
line.
the,
Okay, okay.
behind
You're
the
fine.
black line.
Okay.
As long as you're on the other side of the line.
So we can be on this.
You can be on that other side of the line.
He's not wearing his shirt. Can he go in?
No.
I can't go.
Because you're part of the protest, we're not allowing it.
We're not part of.
Please stop recording.
No, we can't. We can't.
I'm
Record.
asking you to please stop recording.
No, we are. We are going to record. We are not part of. We are outside of the private area. We can record.
I'm sorry?
We can't.
People always seem to not want to be recorded when they're, telling people bullshit. It's this weird thing where they don't want evidence that they're scum. It's odd, but,
Record because we're not on private property.
And we're not.
Look, this is your line, right? We can continue recording.
You can do what you want to do.
I know.
But you come on my property, you will be arrested for trespassing because you've been warned not to trespass on our property at this point.
So,
Because
good?
we're not part of the
It
protest.
doesn't matter.
It doesn't
At
matter.
this point, you've been told we don't want you on our property.
classic movement of the goalposts. Oh, you can't come on our property because you're part of the protest. Oh, we're not part of the protest, sir. That doesn't matter. Okay. Why'd you mention it then?
Right. We just
so you don't want
wanted
us
to make sure we have that on record.
Because we represent ex-Muslims.
Kevin.
Can you read it? Is that your statement? Sir, is it your statement that we can't be on your property?
Alright, well, I think that's, we've got a pretty good idea of what's going to go on in this video. We have a couple quotes here. I was surprised, and this is, I believe, this woman here who is saying this. I was surprised. I was simply drinking my iced coffee and scrolling through my phone, and they told me I needed to leave. So I asked, why? It says Lena, an ex-Muslim Syrian woman who had traveled to the conference on behalf of EXMNA, this is the ex-Muslims of North America, the site that this is on. I was told that they are not allowed I was told they are not allowing protesters on the property. I assured the woman that I was not a protester. She then asked me if I was part of the event or a guest at the hotel. I was neither. I was then told that even though I was a paying customer, I was not allowed to be on the premise, as it was reserved for guests and event members for the weekend, and that they will not be allowing anyone else on their private property. However, I noticed the Starbucks was still open to the public, and I didn't see anyone else being asked to leave. So, clearly, they are lying. If the Starbucks is open to others, but not them, then the reason cannot be that it's because they're not part of the not part of the event. It's also not because they're protesters, because, as they clearly stated, they are not here to protest. So why don't they want them on their property? Well, it's probably pretty clear. They're from the ex-Muslims of North America, and if some SJW realizes that these people are here, well, they might go after their business. So I understand why they'd want to do this, why they wouldn't want them there. It's just kind of ridiculous and pretty cowardly. Upon additional inquiry, after leaving the premises, the hotel employees stated on video that the Eczema group was not welcome to their t-shirts and repeatedly claimed the group was protesting, a charge which all volunteers explicitly denied multiple times. So, it's because of the shirts. basically they don't want to be associated with people wearing these shirts. Okay, well, at least that's like a reasonable thing, or a reasonable view from them, if they believe that people are going to make a big kerfuffle online and it's going to hurt their business. What we've learned is that's not really the case. Usually when someone makes a stand for pro-free speech, they actually get more support than anything else. You know, the one example is during the NFL, when a lot of players were either not going out on the field for the anthem or they were kneeling. I think it was a Pittsburgh Steelers player. Unbeknownst to him, the rest of his team wasn't there. I guess he thought they were behind him. He went and stood out on the field. His jersey sales just exploded. People bought his jersey because he did that. He respected them and said, okay, well, yeah, I actually like the flag. And so people were in favor of this. There was not any negative attention. Well, I'm sure some people were, or had negative opinions of it, but for the most part, the average person just thought this was a positive thing. You can see the same with free speech. You know, people basically doing non-progressive things is actually what it is, but sadly now, since progressivism is so against free speech, well, here we are. This appears to be a case of discrimination. I agree. It does seem to be that way. Again, I can understand why they believe that this is something they should be doing. It's clearly not, but I can understand it. And yes, they are definitely discriminating against someone because of their shirt. Your shirt says something that could offend someone who will be upset with me and my business, so I'm going to kick you off. They're discriminating against them for this. So whatever. It says the president, Mohammed Seed. I guess that's someone who wasn't there. Maybe, I'm not sure. We were asked, I guess he was there. We were asked to leave the premises and informed that we could only enter the premises if we removed the shirts, none of which stated anything inflammatory. The treatment was unjust and especially cruel considering the plight of ex-Muslims. Agreed. Apostasy is very negatively viewed amongst Muslims. There are many countries where the punishment for apostasy is death. So, yeah. It's not a new thing to see Muslims who have left their religion being poorly treated. We are killed and abused all over. Oh, here we go. We are killed and abused all over the world for our disbelief. It is unconscionable that companies like Starbucks and Hilton acquiesce to conservative religious sensibilities. That is kind of funny because Starbucks is generally, you know, it's like one of the most far left companies. It's based in Seattle, so a lot of people there are going to be of the left. It's fine. It's their choice. So it's just odd to see them aligning themselves with the Muslim right or the extremists. As of 2018, over a dozen Muslim-majority countries prescribe the death penalty for Muslims who leave the faith, as I said. Muslim leaders across the world, including most recently Pakistan, have called for international cooperation in penalizing content considered blasphemous in Islam. I suppose that's true. I mean, in Canada we have this silly Islamophobia, I don't know what even to call it, investigation. I'm not sure. I've not really seen much evidence that Muslims are mistreated here. They certainly seem as though they're not being deterred by any mistreatment, since the numbers of them in Canada keep increasing so much. So I'm not really sure what they're complaining about. And again, I've always been of the opinion, if they don't like it, why did they come here? I don't understand. Like, if you don't like Canada because it's such an oppressive nation, or the US because it's so oppressive, or Europe, why do you go to these places? It's an interesting question. I don't expect much of the media to cover what happened here. Yeah. Previously, we have faced discrimination at the hands of employees at other companies due to our apostasy, and the coverage was minimal. Continues Mohammed Said. In 2016, Wegmans refused to bake ex-Muslims of North America an anniversary cake, allegedly due to offense the cake design was causing the bakery's Muslim employees. Wow. Okay, so they're not allowed, or they cannot bake a cake, but a Christian who doesn't want to bake a cake, or actually, it wasn't even that he wouldn't bake the cake, he wouldn't decorate it. He was perfectly fine with baking a cake and giving it to them with plain decorations. He simply didn't want to use his art to do something that he thought was, well, sinful. And as far as I'm concerned, that's his right. And these people who do not want to bake a cake for the ex-Muslims in North America have every right to not do that, as long as we apply this consistently. But if we're going to go after people for not baking cakes, then, well, sorry guys, these Muslim employees better start baking ex-Muslim cakes. Oh, what a funny troll it would be to find a Muslim bakery and start baking ex-Muslim apostasy cake, or asking them to bake ex-Muslim apostasy cakes, if at some point it is put into law that you must bake a cake for someone who asks them to. Because if it is, then they have to bake them. But for some reason, I don't think that would be enforced. I don't know what it is. The design of cake rejected as offensive by the bakery contained only the statement, "Congrats on 3 years," alongside the organization's name and logo. Not that offensive. It's really not. The gay wedding cake... Oh, here we go. We're actually going to talk about it. I did not read this, at least the bottom part here before, so sorry for double covering. The gay wedding cake issue was gaining a lot of coverage back then, so no one would have assumed that our discrimination would be very relevant. But sadly, people are divided by politics instead of sticking to their principles. Fucking truth, man. Freedom of religion and freedom from religion are non-partisan issues. They should be, but they're not. We should all be fighting for. Most ex-Muslims are progressive or broadly on the left. Okay, so it is especially discouraging to see the lack of solidarity from progressives. Well, that's so interesting. So the ex-Muslims of North America consider themselves progressives. This is fascinating. I had no idea. Armin Navabi, an Iranian atheist activist, was in Houston on behalf of, I keep thinking eczema, but EXMNA. Our goal was to see how tolerant Muslims can be. To our delight, we found many Muslims were tolerant, he stated. On the other hand, we found that many Westerners were intolerant. It seems that saviors of Muslims are more sensitive about anything that could potentially offend Muslims than Muslims are themselves. The white liberal problem. Fair enough. Hazar, another Syrian ex-Muslim who was in Houston for ISNA, I suppose this is what they were attending, or the conference that was going on. I expected negative pushback of our presence by ISNA itself, but in fact most Muslims we talked to were welcoming. And so I certainly didn't expect to be discriminated against on American soil by the Hilton staff for refusing to be closeted about my ex-Muslim identity. It was important for me to represent ex-Muslims at ISNA because we are some of the lucky few who are able to do so with minimal consequences in comparison to those of us who aren't privileged enough to live in a democratic society. And yet, today, the treatment we received by the staff at the Hilton felt just as dehumanizing. I imagine it did. Oh, you're not allowed on these premises because you believe something. That's what they're saying. It's not really the shirt itself. It's the fact that they believe it and are willing to tell people that they believe it. You have an opinion we don't like, therefore we will not do business with you. Okay, so the extension of this principle is that anyone should be allowed to do this, but of course we know that's not the case in America. I don't know. It seems rather hypocritical of the left to be having both of these things in their mind at the same time, but if there's anything I've learned from the past year and a half, it's that hypocrisy on the left is basically, that's par for the course. Well, thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and have a good day.